I remember a couple years back when Liza P was announced, some friends and I were interested in the game, but really just kind of making fun of the whole premise.
Houdini is a fan of Pinocchio.
Geppetto was a father figure for me growing up. So fast forward to a couple weeks ago, and Liza P was rapidly becoming one of the most anticipated games of an already far too busy 2023 release schedule. Liza P is heavily inspired by some of my favorite games, with clear nods to games like Bloodborne and Sekiro. And honestly, that was just going to be enough for me. I've been feeling the itch to play a new Souls game in recent months, so much so I randomly decided to play through Elden Ring again. But Liza P isn't just a simple copycat, it brings some cool new ideas of its own to the table. At the time of this video, I'm about 7 or 8 hours into Liza P, and at the time of this video, I'm absolutely loving those 7 to 8 hours. The messed up city of Krat has been so much fun to dive into. I thought running through a world full of evil living puppets would be a little unsettling, and it can be, but it's so much more satisfying to bash their heads in that I feel like their creepy little faces don't even bother me a whole lot. If you're familiar with the pre-Elden Ring Souls games, you'll feel right at home with Liza P. When it comes to level design, areas are mostly linear, with branching paths opening up around each corner, some with just an extra item, some with tough optional enemies, and even some with the occasional NPC or quest item. Exploring each area fully has been a requirement for me. I have to see what's around each corner, talk to each person, kill every enemy, and so on. I will say though, while I have found some cool stuff off the beaten path, I've yet to find one of those super secret areas or bosses that really make me feel like I found something others may have missed, or that I was super proud to find on my own. For the most part, if you check all your corners and are pretty diligent, you won't miss anything, at least as far as in my experience. I'm sure I have missed some really niche story requirements for some elaborate ending or quest line or something, but who knows. Something neat this game does do to help alleviate that worry of missing something, or a quest or NPC conversation, is when you find a special item that an NPC might want, it adds a little indicator to the fast travel for which area it needs to go to as a little reminder to go back there and get your reward. Depending on how much you want the game to hold your hand, this could be a little bit too much assistance, but I think it's a great addition personally. And while the world has been really interesting and well put together, the gameplay of Liza P is what's really had me hooked. But I'll be honest, it's hard to talk about the gameplay of Liza P without mentioning how similar the base gameplay loop is to games like Bloodborne or Dark Souls. You run through intricate levels, fight enemies and bosses along the way, utilizing light and heavy attacks and dodge rolls. Weapons have their own movesets, special skills you can use, and so far everything I've chosen to do has felt like it has its own use case and was viable. Specking out my character hits all the same receptors in my brain that a FromSoft game would, and I love the sight of my ergo number, this game's equivalent of the currency that is souls in Dark Souls games, go up and turn blue to let me know I have enough to level up again. Now all of this is pretty standard fare for a Souls game, but there's some added touches that Liza P includes to make it feel just a little bit more unique. The weapon crafting system has a lot of potential, allowing you to mix and match the top and bottom of most weapons to create an all-new weapon with a special skill and feel of one weapon with the damage type and reach of another. It's a really cool concept that I want to focus in more as the game gets going and I get more options. Options have been plentiful so far, and if you explore the areas thoroughly like I mentioned earlier, you'll have no problem getting a long list of diverse weapon options. Liza P also has a more traditional skill tree on top of the character level up system. This is a little slower to build up, requiring a rare material called Quartz I've only found from bosses and difficult out of the way enemies, but this skill tree adds new capabilities to P, anything from having an extra heal available to being able to dodge roll more frequently. These upgrades feel more significant when I get them because it's not just a stat buff, it can actually change the way your character feels and how you take on certain obstacles. Now I have been pretty high on the game so far, but there are a couple quirks that are worth mentioning. The main one being, at times, things can feel a little stiff with the movement and animations. P is pretty easy to get a grasp on. It took me a little time to get used to the cadence of his attacks and how to best use the roll and dodge, but the main thing I still have trouble with is some of the enemy timings. Some telegraphed attacks will look very simple to dodge, whether it just be a bad read on my end or weird timing in hitboxes, I get hit more often than I'm expecting to. Sometimes, the best method I have found for tough bosses is rather than dodging or blocking an attack, I just run backwards away from them so I don't have to feel dumb when my roll timing's bad. I'm sure I'll continue to improve and get more comfortable here, it's just something I've been battling with since I started playing. Also, the fact that the game let me level up at any checkpoint at the start of the game, and then it randomly decided to take that away from me and force me to level up at one specific location going forward, felt like an odd choice. It really just adds an extra step and loading time with no value added. As far as enemy diversity goes, I wouldn't call it a strong point, but it's also not a jarring issue either. Some basic enemies have already begun to become a little too familiar, but a good mix of bosses and one-off enemies keeps it feeling fresh. Another thing that feels a little off is the NPC animations. While I think the game looks very pretty and the characters are well voice acted, they can feel a little rigid when you sit there and talk to them. But I'm just kind of reaching at this point. Overall, the game is better than I could have hoped for, and I can't wait to play more. It's been hard to set the controller down ever since I started playing. Even in a year as packed as this one, I really feel like Lies of P is going to end up on my short list for favorite games of the year. Thanks for watching.